Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruch Haba. We're continuing Mishna Berura, Daf Hashavua. Today, we begin what is called Kuntris Mamar Kaddishin. Kuntris Mamar Kaddishin. What is Kuntris Mamar Kaddishin? That is the Bir Halacha summary based on the Levush, Magen Avram, Knesset Yecheskel, Dar Chachayim, Magen Giborim, and other Achronim regarding the laws and the rights of first opportunity when it comes to Kaddish. So we're gonna be reading it. We'll see how far we read in it, but let's begin. It begins in the beginning of Siman Kuf Lamed Beis. Chamisha chilukim heim ba'amiras Kaddish. There are 5 distinctions when it comes to saying Kaddish. Ve'eluhein. Ben Shiva, someone saying Kaddish for a relative during the Shiva, during the first 7 days. Uben Shloishim, someone saying Kaddish within 30 days. Uben Yud Beis Chodesh, and within 12 months of Avelos. Or V'yom Hafsaka, the day of stopping, Dahainu Shapoisik Boi Miloimer Kaddish, and then V'yartzeit. All of these 5 categories have a separate status unto themselves. The logic, the rationale behind these different madrigos, says the Chafetz Chaim, it would seem the Chazal founded it based on the Midas Hadin that extends during these different periods. V'hakadesh hu lahagein. The saying of Kaddish is a protection from the Midas Hadin. Ulakach Shiva yamim harishayim tzarich yoser rachamim mischos. During the Shiva, the person needs more mercy and merit. Ushloishim tzarich yoser rachamim yud beis chodesh. V'yartzeit hu mishnei tamim. What's the logic of the yartzeit? So Shiva we understand, Shloishim we understand, Yud Beis Chodesh we understand. Each of these units of time have a certain midas hadin that one needs protection from. The yard side is for 2 reasons. Either it's for the sake of the avel. The mazel of the avel is weak on that day because his relative passed away. So the avel needs the Kaddish. The Kaddish is on the yard side is for the avel, which is very interesting that the purpose of the Kaddish is to protect the avel. Chumash kasav alavush b'yardea Siman tav beis of Yud beis. Amud 2. Let's see. The Elef Hamagen on the Matir Ram explains, because on that day they're mala the mace to a higher madrega, therefore they investigate and they analyze the son if the parent should be promoted, because the Av and the Ben are like Guf Echad, and through the Masim Tovim of the Ben, the Hiurim are Mesala. So Elef Hamagen says the Avel needs the Kaddish. The Kaddish on a yard side is not for the mess, it's for the Avel, because the Avel is scrutinized. That they're giving the parent a promotion, but maybe the parent is not worthy, so the Avel needs the Zuchas. Or that it should be a Nachas for the father or mother to protect them and to atone for them. What's the nafkamina between these 2 reasons? The Dirshu brings from Lavush. If a yard side pushes off a shloishim legamri, or he's only doicha from one Kaddish. In other words, we know that me'ikar adin, only one person is supposed to say Kaddish. Nowadays, for whatever reason, everyone likes to say Kaddish. But me'ikar adin, only one person says Kaddish. So the question is, a yard side has priority over a ben shloishim. But does he completely push him away, or only from one Kaddish? If Kaddish is for the nifter, so then the yard side pushes away the ben shloishim legamri. But it's for the chai, it only pushes it off for one Kaddish. Lamaisa, the Bir Halacha paskins that the yard side only pushes off the shloshim from one Kaddish. Okay. The Bir Halacha continues. V'yom hafsaka, and the day of hafsaka, that's the day that Avelim stops saying Kaddish. Nagu Avelim lasis loy kol Hakadeishim. The minhag is we give the Avelim all the Kaddiishim. Mishum dekimin denagu lahafsik chodesh kaidem, since they stop a month early. Uveshvil shemavatam chodesh yamim, because they're, so to speak, being mavatar on a month. Nasun loy kedimazu, we give them this priority. Umehai taima enoi kaidem lichas liyard side ulaben shloisham. For this reason, they only take precedence over a Yud Beis Chodesh. The Yom Hafsaka only takes precedence over the Yud Beis Chodesh. But they don't take precedence over a yard side and a Ben Shloshim. Ki enam mistakrim klum al yadai. Because they don't get anything. The belav hachi yeshlam din kedim alav. Because anyway, they fundamentally come before the Yom Hafsaka. We only count the Shiva and the Shloshim from the day of burial. Even though, let's say, a person died and he wasn't buried until a month later, the Shiva starts from the Kvura, the Shloshim starts from the Kvura. We don't count from the day of demise, and not from the day that a person found out about the death. Kamoi shekasav harama b'yardea siman shin ayin vav sif daled. Mishum de ikrei dinim shal gehenim maschel mistimas hagoylal. The main fire of the oven of the purgatory only begins from the burial, not from the death. They rake up the heat, they crank up the heat from when the burial is finished, not from the misa. Therefore, the Shach says, since the Iker Gehenim is Mistimas Hagoylel, the Shach says, we don't say Kaddish Lifnei Hakvura. Let's say, for example, on Shabbos. As this is in contradistinction to the Taz, that Shabbos before the Kvura, we do say Kaddish. But we paskin like the Taz. We paskin, one does say Kaddish on Shabbos before the Kvura. The Chachmas Adam paskins like the Taz, and the Chachmas Adam explains there are many other Midas Hadin before Gehenim, like the Zayar says. Also the Igros Moshe, even though normally Rav Moshe paskins like the Shach, here he goes like the Taz, that the Kaddish helps that to save the Niftar from some form of Gehenim. The Mishnah Berura already said earlier in Siman Ayin Aleph, Sivkat and Zayin and Neim Prim Legadim, that if the son is an Oinein, but he gave it over to the Chevra Kadisha, he's allowed to go to Shul and say Kaddish, and for sure on Shabbos and Yom Tov, he doesn't push away other Avelim, and that's the Psak of Rav Moshe, that the Avel should say Kaddish, and the Gesher Chaim says the Minog is to say Kaddish on Shabbos for the Kvura. It's just he's not doicha the Kaddish of others, and that's the psak of Shal Teshuva Tzitz Eliezer, which is that it's the Minog Yerushalayim, like the Taz, not like the Shach. Okay, weiter in this Maimer Hakadeishim. The yard side Moina Miyom Hamisa. The yard side we calculate from the day of death. Kamay Shekasa B'Yardea Siman Taf Beis Sif Yud Beis B'Hagal Le'inyan HaTainis. Not from the Kvura. Although I think maybe for the first yard site, if the Kvura is more than 1 day away from the Misa, then you're going to count from the Yom HaKvura because of Dinei Avelos. Yeah? It doesn't matter if the Avel was by the Misa or only by the Kvura. Vafilu b'shana Rishayna, even in the first year. However, in the Dirshu number 16, even if the Yom HaKvura was many days after the Yom HaMisa, the Mishnah Berura will say later on, Siman Tavkov Samaches, that in other years the yard site goes by the Yom HaMisa, but Legabe Legabe the yard side in Shana Rishona, that's a machlokes. So we saw before the Shiva and the Shloishim go by the Kvura, not by the Misa. Why? Because the Ikare Dine Gehenim go by the Kvura. And therefore Avelus goes by the Kvura. Yard side goes by the Misa. But in Shana Rishona, if the Kvura is more than a day after the Misa, then there's an inyan to do the yard side by the Kvura because of Dine Avelos. Okay. V'yoim hafsaka, the day that you stop Kaddish, nira mehalavush d'maynim miyom hakvura. It appears in Lavush that you count from the day of Kvura. Ach im yesh yamim rabim be'misa l'kvura ein mayna el miyom hamisa. But, so in other words, in terms of stopping to say Kaddish, it goes by the Yom HaKvura. But if there are many days, I guess 11 months after the Yom HaKvura, but if there are many days between the Misa and the Kvura, then you go by the Yom HaMisa. The Dirshu brings something very interesting. He says in the original printing of the Mishnah Berura, the Girsa was, if there are many days between the Misa and the Kvura, you follow the Kvura. Which the Dirshu asks, which is a question, because that means he's saying that you always are moina the Yom Hafsaka from the Yom HaKvura. Rav Moshe's gersa was, even if there are many days, ein moinin ela mi Yom HaKvura. In other words, like this. In the original printing of the Mishnah Berura, it says like this: Yom Hafsaka ner melvash d'maynim Yom HaKvura. The Yom Hafsaka goes by the Yom HaKvura. And the original printing of the Mishnah Berura, it says Achem yesh yamim rabim be'misla kvura ein moinin mi Yom HaKvura. Then you don't. Which is a question. He just said in the words before that you do. So Rav Moshe was goyres. Even if there are many days, ein moinen ela mi Yom HaKvura, which is a chiddush, because that means the people who remember that the Yom HaMisa was earlier, they're going to think you're saying Kaddish for more than 11 months, and they're going to think the father was a Rasha. Rav Moshe says we don't care, and the Shoina Halachos is goyres like Rav Moshe. But I don't know why the Dirshu is not goyres this way. The Dirshu is goyres like the Sefer Birur Halacha, that if there are many days between the Kvura and the Misa, you go by the Misa? I don't understand the Girsa of the Dirshu. I don't think... I would go with the Girsa of Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Reb Moshe Feinstein, that when it comes to the Yom Hafsaka, stopping to say Kaddish, it's 11 months after the Kvura. By the way, Rav Moshe has to change another word in the Mishnah Berura. In the Bir Halacha. Look at what we have now. The way our Dirshu Bir Halacha, I don't know what edition you have, the way the Dirshu is goyres is that how do you calculate when to stop saying Kaddish? So the Levush is mashma that you go by the Yom HaKvura, but if there's a long break between the Misa and the Kvura, then you only go by the Misa. Rav Moshe says, no, that's wrong. And you have to change two words. You have to change Yom HaMisa to Yom HaKvura, and not ach, but. Not but. He started off by saying, you go by the Yom HaKvura. Af, even if the Misa is, even if the Kvura is many days from the Misa, you still go by the Yom HaKvura. So Rav Moshe changes two things that make a very, 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 very big difference in halacha. He changes the word ach to af, and he changes the word misa to kvura. And that's Reb Chaim Kanievsky's gersa. And I don't know why they didn't have it this way, I guess in the original printings of the Mishnah Berura, it said, Achim yesh yom rab ben mizlik vura ein moinen ela miyom hakvura. And the question on that is, okay, we already said that. We already said you always count from the yom hakvura. So therefore, they wanted to change it to misa. So Moshe says, no, keep it at kvura and change the word ach to af. And I think that's what we do l'maisa, that you say Kaddish from the yom hakvura under all circumstances. Yeah? Okay, Rabbi, so we'll hold it over here.
Recording stopped.